Hi guys, welcome back to the What Life. We are doing London OG Zwift Racing Monthly League. This is the third of the series, and we are doing a Richmond kind of London loop. Can't remember what the exact name of it is, or Richmond ICU course. Let's roll. Out the gates, Zwift obviously having some update issues because it has my avatar just kind of diving into the middle of the pack. I'll have to say I was a little bit slow off the line on this one. 67 people I think signed up, so maybe 70 people in the lineup. I kind of maybe missed the gun a tiny bit on the start, so somewhere in the pack where I mean it's fine, race strings out as is normal, but I just didn't want to I wanted to make sure I didn't miss the front group, so put in a bit of an effort. Kind of felt like in terms of Swifty starts, this one went on a little bit more than normal. Anyway, the route today, guys. I don't really know this course that well, but if you look at the mini-map top right, you look at the gradient on it, you can see that it's all pretty flat. Then we get a little downhill, then we get a couple of hills, and it finishes on a climb. So this did bring back some terrible memories from doing a few other races on this course. I know that the back end of this race is way more spicy than the front end. So the plan was just to sit on this group and see whether we could whistle the group down. The race itself is 10 miles long, or 10 and a bit miles long, 16.4k. And that's quite short. So we're looking at 20 odd minutes, maybe 21 minutes. I'm not sure what the exact time ended up being. You can see that because it's a flat route to start with, that we end up with quite a big bunch. Our first group, the first bunch, and remember this is Cat C, the first group is about, like 45 to 50 people big. We settle ourselves into a bit of a rhythm. I didn't want to panic. I didn't want to make any moves. Just very happy, sat at the back for now. I didn't really know how this one was going to play out for me because it's a single loop, so you're not repeating a loop, so you don't get to learn anything about little places that work well for you or don't work well for you. You just have to suck it up and ride the course. Power-ups today, we have Steamroller, Anvil, and Aero. Obviously, Aero, self-explanatory. Anvil, I think, add weights on the descent. Steamroller, I still have no clue what it does. But a few people are using it here. I'm sure somebody will let me know what the Steamroller does in the comments. And I will actually have a look and check. So a large part of this race initially was, because you can see mini-map, little break of the group, but I still think there's 40 odd in our front bunch, which is a ton of people. The only way this is going to break up is if someone takes the lead and we try and hammer it, or if there is a bit of an incline. It's a shame that there wasn't a bit of an incline towards the front of the race, because then it would have broken it up a little bit. But for now, someone dives in the chat here and says up it, which was such a, I mean, it's a really good call. And to be fair, I think he says it and then he charges off. Now keep an eye on the wattage, because this does build up. Someone very simply just says up it, and then we just kind of go. Mini-map, top right, the race starts to string out. So it's hard because stringing out is very different to riding off the front. It's very hard to make moves stick. So if you're going to say up it and you're going to work, everyone is going to move with you, or everyone does move, and it strings out enough. But the question is, you know, how many people do we drop? Do we get a split in the group? And I kind of dog this out. Look at the wattage. Really have to go up to 400 watts to kind of keep my nose in the game. But the problem is, obviously, that if we all string out and we kind of riding 2x, then people will end up working back into a big group where we're 4 up. But I think the aim, or all I was thinking here, is like if there is a split in the group, and you can see, look, it almost looks like I get caught the wrong side of the split, or, you know, at least there's a few moments where it looks like, okay, there's, you know, half a dozen people up front or a dozen people up front. You know, I just wanted to try and stay with them, so I kind of worked a little bit. You can see the heart rate nudging up a little bit, heart rate up at 150 odd. So I was having to kind of work to stay with the group and get back onto the group. But then how much does that actually split the group in terms of the 40 odd that we had initially? I don't think it really drops that many people. I've got an eye on that mini map on the right, and it looks like there might be a few little breaks in there, but I still think we're going to end up with like 30 odd, because there's 25 people up front as it is. Hand in the air though, I don't go to the front and do any pulling. That wasn't on the agenda today for me, given how I feel. But it still felt like we moved pretty well. We put a kick in, and then the wattage comes back down here. So it didn't, we might have split the group slightly, but I don't, it thinned it out a little bit, right? We've gone from 45 to maybe 30 odd now. You can see as we do the U-turn on the mini map that a few people kind of were dropped. So that's not a bad thing. No bad thing there. But then the wattage comes back off. Again, like I said, I'm not going to complain about that because I'm sat in the group. I'm not at the front working. I don't think I had the legs for that. Also, I knew that we were finishing on a climb at the end, which is basically my nemesis. Like having to work a climb and dog out a climb at the end of a race is just hell, because coming into a climb, I do not have a sprint if we have to kind of get out the saddle after holding. Like, that's what I'm trying to work on at the moment, is develop that kind of ability to go from high wattage into a sprint. I struggle with that. We kind of skip through this bit a little. It's just a big group ride at this stage, tons of people. Did I find this route particularly exciting? Probably not. It's a fairly classic race where just big groups and then little opportunities for it to break up. So skipping through this bit, nothing really exciting happens. You can see from wattage and heart rate that we're not on the cutting edge of performance here for a Cat C. It felt like everyone was just happy to roll along and do little bits, but nothing that was like mega work, or we didn't keep the foot on the gas the whole time. I will say that as far as kind of Cat C race goes, like, it was a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed the second half of it, because that's when it got a little bit more spicy. But for me at the moment, sitting in the draft, holding the group, kind of realizing how many people there are, taking stock of the bits that were going to come later, was basically my main goal. But then I looked at the mini-map and I saw there's a bit of a downhill coming, right? So I thought, do you know what? Let's take to the front. Let's push it a little bit. Let's see who comes with and just try and up the pace a little bit. I don't know why. Just one of those weird things that kind of gets in my head. Some guy then hammers it off. And this is a really interesting tactic because he gets a bit upset. I think he kind of does this and then he dives in the chat and gets upset about it. So he drops an absolute whop bomb, right? And then hammers it off on his own. And then he's upset that people don't go with him. Which I understand that he's upset, right? Because he's put all this effort in to kind of get a bit of the lead off and go on his own. But I think, in all honesty, if I was to do that, I would sit. He dives in the group and goes, no one, like, unhappy face. If you're not going to give people a bit of a warning, because if you were in a race, you could happily just say, look, I need some people to come with me. Like, I just don't see how stomping on the pedals and hammering it off is a good tactic, and then kind of riding for 30 seconds, 20 seconds, and then basically just complaining that no one went with you. I think if you're gonna do it, kind of be sensible about it, maybe nudge up a little bit, try and take a few people with you. Stomping on the pedals, dropping the fire socks, and then disappearing into the ether. Everyone who's smart just knows that you're not going to be able to hold that on your own, so why would they go with you? So that's an interesting one. That's something for you to think about, whoever that was that rode off the front. Something to think about next time you dive into a race. Like, if you want people to go with you, there is a chat for a reason. We are not racing outdoors, guys. This is esports. I almost fall off the back here because I'm not really paying enough attention, but I work a little bit to get back on. I think the wattage must have nudged up a little bit, so I guess I guess we might have dropped 1 or 2 people. But the front group itself is still quite big. I'm going to fast forward this bit because now that we're down the bottom of the hill, it kind of flattens off again, and once again these are like these little recovery stages. If you look at the mini map top right, okay, so we are doing this forward, the Richmond UCI forward, which basically means that we're going from left to right on the topology part of the mini map, which is the incline bit on the bottom of the mini map, top right hand corner. You'll see there's 2 sprint sections, and then there's 2 little hill climbs, or sorry, 2 hill climbs and a finish line. So you can see that this part of the course, you know, we're now at the bottom and we are basically riding the flat section. Wattage is quite casual, 40 odd people in the front group. We all know, or I certainly know, that once we get round to those little hill climbs, that's what's going to break the group up. That's what's going to separate the group. So my mentality is sit at the back of the group or sit in the thick of the group and then work like an absolute dog on the hills, especially the first one, to stay in it, to stay with the front group, because that out of 40 people, I was thinking maybe 12 are going to ride off the top together, because this is where the race goes from being like a group race, like a big 40-person front group, to then just breaking it down into individuals. And this is the bit that I love, right? So if you're looking at this and watching this prior to doing it, you know, you got to save your matches for this little hill section. I move to the front because I like to climb from the front, because it gives me more of an opportunity to let people chase me and then hopefully, make them work hard. I like to kind of move to the front for a climb and then kind of gradually let myself come back if I feel like I'm struggling, or if I'm feeling good, then you just ride from the front. So this is when the watts come on. This is 160 HR, 350 watts, 400 watts onto the corner. Try and hold the watts every time. You know, obviously the corners are the steeper bits, so just try and hold some fairly decent wattage for a reasonable amount of time as we kind of work our way through this cobbled climb. The heart rate obviously starts climbing, which is killing me. You know, 164, 163 is a tough heart rate for me. I max out. Well, do you know what? I have hit 178, 180 previously, but I would normally only do that if I'd had a few rest days and kind of wasn't working to exhaustion. Still managed to keep the wattage on, so a few more corners. I have to like dog this little section out. I see the banner, so that's a little hopefully get a little power up coming through the banner. Is that right? Yep, in comes the power ups. I'm in with a shot, guys. Look, I'm in 7th place. You can see on the mini map the group is completely like broken up. We've got half a shot of being in the front group. You have to ride off the top of this. If you don't ride off the top, you're just going to go backwards. So I do my utmost darndest to try and stay with the group on this and just about get back in, right? So get back in. I'm absolutely blowing, like this hurt like crazy, but at least I'm up there with the kids, kind of trying to hold some fairly decent wattage, or trying to recover, sorry. And because I know we got a little downhill, got my anvil. I think it just adds weight on a descent, so it means that you roll through descents a lot quicker. So use that on the descent in a second once it gets steepens up a little bit and I kind of regain consciousness after recovering from that climb. Drop the anvil, move back in, still with that kind of front group of 6 to 8 people, although a group is a very loose term because I think everyone's just riding however they can. Make the most of the power up and just kind of use the kind of advantage of it kind of giving me a bit more weight. A few guys hammer this climb. Hammer. Look at the watts per kg on the right. And then that is what just kills me. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to just mini-map. Look, there's our group, 10% on the climb. And this is when I just start losing them so painfully close at the top of the climb. But when you've got nothing to give, you've got nothing to give. It doesn't matter. You know, your pockets are empty. So I just lose that front group, which was frustrating as hell. So I'm sat in 10th place now. I don't want to call it a group because I think everyone's just riding individually now because it's a series of little inclines and you don't end up really kind of riding it as a group. Some guy comes from behind and I decide that I'm just going to let him pass and try and sit on his tail, and that's about it. That's about all I can do. This puts me in 11th spot for the race at the moment, and all I'm thinking to myself is it would be great to finish top 10. That suddenly becomes the goal. The guys at the front are riding this descent very strong. I really struggled to ride this descent. There we go, back into top 10. There's 9th place. I really struggled to ride this descent well. Like basically keeping wattage on the descent when I'm absolutely foobarred was just so hard. For me anyway. Struggle bus city. We've got 2 more things coming up, which is this little flat section and then the incline. And that's the final incline. I am running on my bike Shimano 105s with a Shimano Ultegra R8000 rear derailleur. My shifting, it's mechanical shifting, is not the greatest. I always kind of struggle. I do that thing where I have to close my eyes when I shift because it might just skip a gear or my chain might bump off. But it's not too bad, but it's certainly not Di2 quality shifting. So I always kind of, on these inclines, sometimes I try and keep it in the big ring, 52 teeth on the front ring, and then just ride biggie. So rather than biggie smalls. So I'm big front ring, big rear ring, but then if I try and drop down, like my wattage, I always have that little funny mechanical clunk, and then, I lose a bit of wattage for that second or so during my shifts. Anyway, I'm riding as hard as I can for this section. Some guy is just ahead of me. I am determined, if I can, to try and push past this guy. Watts per kg is fairly reasonable. Just at the end of a 23-minute race at the moment, I am struggling a little bit. Just the fatigue is kicking in. The incline finish is such a killer. I do notice on the mini-map that I'm being chased by a group. I've now moved up into 9th place, just managed to overtake that guy on the climb. Is he going to come back? Maybe. So that was basically my only motivation, was to try and not get caught. That lad obviously just hammers it past. I got no chance to catch him. He's moving very well. So the finish line becomes in sight, and the plan is just to try and keep the watts high. There's no way in hell I can sprint. I can't go from 300 odd watts into a 1000 watt sprint because I don't know how you do that. How do you train for that? How do you train from 300 watts into like 1000 watt sprint? Because I can hit 1000 watts on a sprint. I just can't do it whilst I'm fatigued and having to hold reasonably high wattage to get there. So finish line is closing in. I'm basically just dot watching top right on the mini map to try and stay ahead of anyone that comes along. I'm happy in 10th spot. 10th would be a great finish for me. I think I end up 6th on Zwift Power after a few, let's just say, dubious race individuals for the race. So I end up in 6th, which is a great result. I'm absolutely balls. I love that. I'm going to do that in Cat B this week, actually. I'm going to give that another shot, Cat B. Thanks for joining in, guys. I will see you on the next one.